Welcome agents, named items have a problem. Rather than focus on numerous things in this one video, today I just wanted to dedicate this video to named items and why, although a great addition with title update 6, a very good addition, they have a real problem, and more often than not they're actually pointless grinding for. If you enjoy this one, please hit the like button below, subscribe for dedicated Division 2 content, and let's begin. So put your hands up if you are enjoying grinding for named items. Now you can't see me, but my hand is up because named items they're cool. So first and foremost, this isn't a rant video or blast video, nothing like that, and should be entirely seen as constructive criticism. It's also important to note that I think named items are the saving grace of episode 2. They've become the pinnacle item to chase, something that the Division 2 really needed, and it'll have you spending days of grinding to get them all, essentially. Now I said this before, but they're not going to give you a huge increase in power. In fact, you get a very small amount of extra power, but it's that little bit of extra power at the end game that everyone's chasing. If you want to get the min-max and the most out of your build, then you're going to want to get these because they give you that little bit of extra power that someone who doesn't have that particular named item hasn't got. So what's the problem then? Well, it wasn't until recently when I picked up the Firm Handshake named gloves, and these are Sokolov Concern gloves, that I realised one thing. One very important thing that I don't know how, but I'd completely overlooked. The perfect talents on these named items cannot be swapped to any other gear, and the named item is completely set in stone, in that it is a specific brand of gear. Now I knew this, but I just didn't think about it because I was excited to play the game. Yeah, the attributes on these particular named items can roll to whatever, but for you to make these named items work, specifically gear, you have to create a build around this one named item, effectively removing any real build making when named items are involved. Now I don't know why I didn't think of this, it's only just hit me. I guess for me, named items and the perfect talents have been such a great addition to the game. I kind of just wanted to, sing the praise of the devs, but I do feel as though more could be done here to make them just even more desirable than they already are. Right now, there are a few named items that's just simply, to me, they just don't make any sense, and you're just never ever going to use them. So let's take a look at one of those. On the official Reddit page for the Division 2 is this post, which contains all named weapons and gear. Now, I would highly recommend you use this as kind of like a checklist. I've been using this to see what I have, what I don't have. It also tells you where stuff is. I know a lot of people didn't realise, that there was DZ specific gear, and this tells you where it is, essentially. Now, here you'll see a good example of what I mean with these Death Grips 511 gloves, which have perfect clutch. You've probably already seen the problem here. Now, Perfect Clutch is probably one of the most sought after perfect talents right now, alongside Perfect Berserk and a couple of other things really. Just because Clutch itself as a talent is just very strong in this update. A lot of Clutch AR builds and all that sort of stuff. But because it's rolled onto 511 gloves, it's pretty much worthless in its named state. I mean, who's putting 511 gloves on their Clutch build? No one. No one is doing that. Everyone's putting Alp Summit, for very good reasons, and that's why this named gear item at this point it's just completely redundant. You're going to get this named item and be like, great, I've got perfect clutch, but I can't really use it. Now don't get me wrong, some of these named items are absolutely worth it, and the brand of gear matches the perfect talent, but wouldn't it just be better if we could swap the perfect talents onto any piece of gear that we want? I mean, it could just be me, but I just think these named items could really limit your builds because you have to essentially build around the named item, and for me it should be the other way around. You should be getting a named item, and if you want to roll perfect clutch onto some Alp Summit gloves, or if you want to roll something else onto something else, then you should be able to do that. And I just think, as I said before, I just think that would make the named items a lot more desirable. I know for me at least, the 511 gloves, if I get those, I would just be storming away, and I'm never going to use that perfect clutch because there's so many other pieces of, take for example Alp Summit gloves, which you're always pretty much going to use because it's got one attribute, it rolls really high, you can get up to like 15% weapon damage. Now you're not going to get that on 511 gloves, so what's the point in having that little bit of extra power from the perfect clutch? Actually, it's probably going to be a lot worse to have those 511 gloves on than the Alp Summit gloves. And you get where I'm going with this. It's just, to me, it doesn't really make sense that we shouldn't be able to roll perfect talents, or sorry, talent swap onto another piece of gear. Now, if you look through the entire list of named weapons and gear, like I said, I'd highly recommend you go out and check this on the actual official Reddit page. You can clearly see the developers have tried their very best to make sure, there's synergy between the piece of gear or the weapon and their perfect talent, but just not all of it works. A lot of it does work, let's be honest, but not all of it does, as with the example before. Now, like I said at the start of the video, I think these named items, they're awesome. And they've certainly given me a reason to start farming again. And I'm just going to be brutally honest with you here, guys. Yesterday was the first time in a very long time that I did all of the invaded missions and Tidal Basin. And I suspect I'll continue doing these to see if I can get some of these named items, because some of them look very, very strong. I'm looking at you, Perfectly Unbreakable. In fact, I'm actually considering an expedition to the Dark Zone in what feels like years for some of the DZ exclusive named items. And these are, without a doubt, a great addition to the game, and I do applaud the devs for their addition, but like everything, there could always be a way to improve them, and I just think having the ability to transfer perfect talents onto other gear, I just think it would be awesome, and it wouldn't limit your build. You wouldn't have to worry about building around one named item and one perfect talent. I can't remember what I've got at the moment, but I've got a perfect talent named item at the moment, and I simply have no idea how I'm going to build, because the talent and the actual brand of gear they don't synergize, so it doesn't make any sense. I know plenty of people who would love to have perfect clutch on their Alp Summit gloves, because that just makes much more sense than 511 gloves, in at least in the current meta. Actually, I don't think in any meta having perfect clutch on 511 gloves is a good idea. So people want perfect clutch on their Alp Summit gloves, or they want it on something else, which makes more sense. And I think just giving people that option in the recal station is a good idea. Even if it just costs a little bit extra, I think it would just be a good idea. I mean, who thinks having 5% protection from elites is worth it? In general, from 511. I don't know anyone who uses 511 gear at all. So I doubt many of you guys will as well. So yeah, in my opinion, they need to make this happen. I have put a poll on Twitter asking if people think we should be able to transfer perfect talents onto other gear. So I'd highly recommend you head on over to my Twitter page and give your input, or you can just leave a comment down below. Of course, if you have any other suggestions that might work, then please leave that down below as well. I've said before about a system where you roll off talents from gear, destroying the piece of gear but leaving the talent in the recal station. That way you can apply it to a piece of gear at any time, and that also means that you don't need to hoard gear, essentially. Now, I think this could absolutely work for perfect talents. I know the devs have, they had good intentions with these named items, and they absolutely work for the most part, but there's always room for improvement. Being able to transfer these perfect talents onto other gear is that improvement, in my opinion, and I suspect a lot of you will agree with me here, and there'll probably be some people who don't. Even with the very limited votes on my poll at this early stage, I can already tell that a huge majority of the community would like this change, and I implore the developers to really consider this for the next update. Now, before I end this video, please do not let this video discourage you from grinding for these named items. I'm going to be grinding for them a lot. They are worth the grind in that they give you something to grind for, and at the end of the day, sometimes it's not always about the final, the end where you get to, but it's the journey there, and this gives you that journey. Now, the way I see it is we should never stop trying to improve, whether that be this game or yourself. I know I'm getting a bit deep here. I mean, this is not me saying the devs have done a bad job and blah blah blah. I just think this could be better, and like everything ever, really, nothing is perfect, but we should always be trying to move things as close to perfect as possible, and allowing these perfect talents to transfer to other gear, in my opinion, is that step towards that. Now, another thing I will just quickly say about named items that I've not mentioned here and I've just thought about is that they tend to roll really bad attributes, and these really bad attributes do not synergize with the build that you want. Now, because the chances of you getting the named item is, very, very low, the chances of you getting a good attribute roll on one of these is basically zero. It's actually probably less of a chance than what it was for you to get, a decent roll pre TU6, meaning that named items not only limit your build potential by forcing you to build around them, just because you can't transfer the talents themselves, but that extra bit of power, you know, it's negated by RNG, because you're essentially hoping that not only has your item dropped, which is, you know, 1% chance or whatever, that it also drops with the right roll. And when you've got like 3 or 2 or 3 attributes or 4 attributes, whatever it might be on a piece of gear, the chances of you getting a good roll is pretty low. Whereas if you could swap talents onto another piece of gear, like, say for example, Alps Summer gloves, where you really only need 1 good roll, you need, you know, all you want is that high weapon damage or whatever it might be, then, you know, you don't have to worry about the RNG as much. I mean, it's still there, but it's not nearly as brutal as what it is currently. Now, in almost every instance, it's going to be better to create a build not focused around a named item, and that's not really good, is it? You know, it's probably going to be better to focus a build around just general stuff. You know, just making a build rather than go, look, here's a named item, I better build around this. It's going to always be better just to make a build, and if a named item can fit in there, great, but the chances are it won't. If you don't do it that way, then you're basically pigeonholing your build, and you're likely just going to get much worse results than just building fresh. But there you go, agents. I just want to thank you all for watching today's video. It's not meant to be negative at all, you know, it's constructive criticism. And I do think that named items, like I've said a million times in this video, are a huge step forward. I just think we can make another step here. If you just stick around to the end of this video, I really do appreciate it. If you agree with me, then, you know, please hit the like button. If you disagree with me, then hit the dislike button. And until the next one, guys, epic out.